Welcome to Music Broadcast and Live Streaming the Beginnings. Panelists include Megan Slankard, Michael McNevin, TK Tran. I will be your moderator, Pete Summer. Wondering how to reach your friends, family, fans, and share your songs over the internet? In this workshop panel, we have three of our distinguished West Coast songwriter colleagues that will present how they started out, how they do it now, and give you tips on avoiding the potholes. And I'm your moderator, Pete Summer, musician, producer, provide artist development, collaborating with songwriters. I've been performing since my youth, played guitar and banjo in rock and folk, country and blues pop bands, concerts, clubs in Southern California, recorded with my own groups and sessions in LA, plus 20 years in high tech, sales, marketing, and broadcast TV, and owned a few record stores back then. More recently, host and manage monthly WCS songwriter competition in Menlo Park and Palo Alto, Redwood City, and produce the Palo Alto chapter of WCS monthly songwriting competition, a 90-minute TV show taped at Mid-Penn Media. Winner of the 2020 Wave Western Access Video Excellence Award. And that's me. Now I'd like to introduce our panel. First off, San Francisco indie rocker Megan Slankard. She independently sold 40,000 copies of her 5 self-released albums and is currently planning the release of a brand new double EP project in 2020. Megan packed 2018 and 2019 with over 10 months of touring, including a 50-show Guitar Center tour with Bose Professional, a songwriter tour with Nashville's Alex Wong, and a 30-date cross-country tour with Toad the Wet Sprocket. Her songwriting has received national and international recognition. She was a finalist in the 2020 Unsigned Only Music Competition and a finalist in 2019 for both the USA Songwriting Contest and the International Acoustic Music Award. Megan won first place in the 2017 Unsigned Only Music Competition, AAA category, and was a finalist in the International Song Competition. Welcome, Megan.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have
glad
you.
to be here.
And we did hit record. Okay, next up we have TK Tran. He's been writing, recording, and performing country music for the past few years around the Bay Area. Listeners have described his sound as traditional country music with a side of soul. Coming from a broadcast background, he transferred the in-studio techniques he's learned and adapted them to the new standard ways of live streaming music. He is frequently active in local music organizations such as West Coast Songwriter. He's the San Jose chapter manager and Musicians on Call, and participates in various songwriting circles often. He has released his debut EP, These Three Chords, earlier this year, featuring his original music, and is currently in the process of recording a full-length album. Welcome, TK. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Pete. Great to be here.
Next up, we got Michael McNevin. Grew up in Niles, California, logging 30 years on the U.S. songwriting circuit. He is winner of the Kerrville New Folk Award in Texas, DIY Artist of the Year for Performing Songwriter Magazine, and is a 7-time winner of the West Coast Songwriters Grand Final Song of the Year. He shared stages with Johnny Cash and the Carter Family, Donovan, Sean Colvin, Richie Havens, Utah Phillips, Christine Lavin, Iris DeMent, Greg Brown, and many others. He's been a main stager at Strawberry, High Sierra, Kerrville, the Redwood Ram, Philly Folk Festival, and Summer Folk in Canada. Welcome, Michael. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks. Awesome.
Okay. Topic areas today will include how to get started, basic setup, platforms, equipment, performance tips, equipment our panelists use, some options and do's and don'ts. The goal is to get you started and or introduce next steps in the evolution of broadcast and live streaming that will help you be successful. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A window, and we'll address those during the Q&A at the end. Thank you all for attending, and we can get started with the basics. Megan, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So you want to know the basics of what I do, or you want to know?
Yeah. How did you first when you first started said, oh, I have to do some streaming on the internet? What was, say, the first approach that you had, and then we can get into the evolution of where you went beyond that.
Perfect. The first thing I did was I just had a cell phone and a Facebook account and a guitar, and I clicked go live, and it's easy, simple, just one button. It worked, and that was great. I have learned some tricks since then, and I've sort of upped my game a little bit. But the great thing about it is if you haven't done it yet, like, just see what happens. Go live for a few minutes and play a song. And then you just sort of improve, upon what works for you. And Now I go through my DAW, and which is my little digital audio workstation, into my computer. I set up my microphone. I can put effects on my mic if I like through my Apollo Twin, and I use OBS and things like that. But you don't need to do any of that to get started. And the great thing is you sort of just like figure out what works best for you and your audience, and sort of just however you want to use it. Sometimes people just don't want all of that craziness and they just want to just do something simple so they can connect with their audience. And I mean, that's the whole point of this platform is we're going to help for those people who haven't done much live streaming yet. We're going to sort of like walk through the very, very basics of like do's and don'ts and how to get started, things like that.
Okay. TK, Michael, who wants to go next?
Go ahead. TK.
All right, so, pre-COVID-19 days, everyone was jamming along with each other every week. We were all up playing music. So when that hit, I think the first thing I did was I streamed on Instagram, or it was Facebook. But everyone knows when you're just on your phone and you hit go live, everything's backwards. It looks like you're a left-hander if you're a right-hander. I think everyone knows it works, but it's not great. So that's what I did at first. But I always had this whole recording setup, all these microphones and mixers and stuff. So it was when all my music friends started getting together on Zoom and stuff is when I started to use this and, adapt it to the live streaming and broadcasting nowadays. So that's how I do it. And I think that's what we're going to be doing for a while.
So, Michael.
Yeah, I did the same thing Megan did, except I was a little even more intimidated, I think, by just pushing the button. I was afraid to push the go live button. Took me a
Scary.
while. And so I have this place called the Mud Puddle Shop. It's been a jam space and a concert space for about 15 years. And so I finally realized, well, I had no choice. Nobody had a choice at that point. You had to jump in and play online or you weren't going to be playing anywhere because of what's been happening. So I set up my phone in a different spot of the shop and I went live and I was left-handed. So the next thing I did was, okay, I'm not going to do that again. And I sound checked live because I didn't know that you could also set up an AV group for yourself. You could set up a private Facebook group. So I did that, and now I can try things out privately. And I'm the only member of my own Mud Puddle AV group, and I can go live on Facebook in that group. And I'm the only one who sees the screw ups and the lighting weirdness until I want it to be where it is. But I ended up with about 10 shows on the iPhone. My first 10 shows were on the iPhone. But I realized that I needed a microphone for dynamics and maybe a little bit of a volume because I was sitting away from the phone. And so I set up a Fishman loud box, a cafe amp. Most guitar player, musician people have an amplifier of some kind that they sing through. So I just put the speaker about a foot and a half away from the iPhone. And then I EQ'd it the way I would in a cafe or in my room, and set up my guitar and my vocal where it sounded balanced, and then I let the phone pick it up. And it worked pretty well. It was just the Wi-Fi that was a problem, and somebody else talked me into getting my computer involved and a hard line Ethernet. So that's gonna probably be later in the conversation, but the iPhone got me started for 10 shows, and it made me realize I could make a living twice a week playing shows with my fans and friends tuning in.
Thanks, Michael.
Small living, but
So we'll move on to, I guess, maybe take a little deeper dive as to what the panelists, what you use currently. That's how you got started. I think one of the keys is what I'm hearing is test, and keep on testing until you perfect that. And I think we've all heard somebody that we really liked, and that's been my experience. I heard TK, I heard all TK, Megan, and Michael, and I call it audio envy. And I had to go, how did they do it? And said, well, let's see what I have that compares to what they're using, and then I can adapt what I have to what I'm to get a sound closer to how they're doing it. So anyway, with that, Megan,
So I sort of already went over the basics of what I do. actually combined two questions. But I have a little, I actually don't use an external video source. I'm not using I'm just using my laptop built-in video. And I know a lot of people do, you can get pretty cheap like video, a camera or something that you can add. Some people use their GoPro, some people, and it can make a big difference. I just I haven't gotten there yet. I'm just more concerned personally about the audio, but I know people who have just gorgeous setups. For me, I really like just going super simple. I use one microphone. I use this microphone, and whatever instrument I'm playing at the time, and set it up. I do sound check. I think that is very important. I actually go through YouTube Live. It works great for me. It's not great for everybody. But Facebook Live has also been a really great option. There are there are dozens and dozens of streaming places you can go through, but I go through YouTube Live, through OBS for my audio. I go through this microphone and my Apollo Twin, which is my DAW that I connect through my computer. And yeah, it's been working great. When I record, I can record my sessions, and the sound sounds good. It's not peaking. I think that's the most important thing, as like Michael was saying, is like, or Pete was saying, somebody was saying, sound check. It's really important. It's really great. Even if sound check means, if you don't know how to do it, if you don't know how to set up an AV room or check it, get a friend to like pop on and go live for 5 minutes and say, how does this sound? And I think that's been super helpful, because you should just always have it set up before if you know you're going to go live at 5 p.m., get on there and start playing around with it at 4:45, like we did today.
That's great. Thank you, Megan. TK.
Yeah, I actually have a handout because I came prepared, which I like to do. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna share my screen here. Well, it's not a handout; it's more so a visualization of my signal chain. I think everybody can see it. You guys can see it, right?
We can, yeah.
Okay,
It looks
cool.
great.
So a lot of people, I think my signal chain's a little complicated, because when you look at the screen here, it's a microphone and it's a dude. That's all you see. Behind everything and underneath the laptop and under my desk, there's mixers and there's analog to digital converters and stuff like that. But this is just the visualization of kind of the simplified setup that I use. So when I'm playing music, I, like Megan, use the webcam. But nowadays, I think you can go on Amazon and get pretty inexpensive cameras that you can plug in via USB. And then I've got a GoPro too, but I don't like that fisheye looking thing when I use it, so it's kind of weird. It looks like a fishbowl. So how I do it is I have my guitar plugged into a compressor, which I don't use too often, but it can be there. And it's just something I used live back when we were all playing live. And then I've got 3 microphones I like to use. The one I'm using right now is the one I think I've been using the most. This one's an MXL BCD1, which is a large dynamic mic. It's more popular with the broadcast people, the people in radio, and people who do voiceover work. The other one I use is Rode Procaster. It's pretty similar to this. And then the condenser I use sometimes is a CAD Audio. So both those things, the guitar and the microphones, go into my mixer, which is totally analog. And then that goes out via RCA into a converter that turns it into a USB signal. And that goes into the laptop, which then the laptop recognizes. And then from there on, you can use any streaming platform you want, whether it's Zoom, Facebook, or YouTube. You just need to make sure you pick the right input, because you could plug all this in and you could be using your laptop mic and you sound terrible, but everyone thinks they're using like their whole setup. So that's a common problem I've seen. But yeah, that's pretty much my setup. I don't know if there's any more detail I can go into, but if you guys have questions, just throw it in the chat.
Thanks, TK.
I'm gonna stop my share.
All right. Michael.
I think he's
we can't hear
muted.
you. You're muted.
Sorry about that. So I'm a little bit of a Luddite with computers and mics. So I just needed to grab whatever I owned in my basement in my trunk from when I was doing regular gigs. So I grabbed my SM58 and I plugged it into a little Fishman Cafe amp, and it handles my vocal. That's what you're hearing me talk on. And I can add a little reverb because it's right next to me. I can do this if I want to. This is what I did because I'm also not very good with. Can you see that?
I forgot how well you draw. I love your drawings.
So that, if you guys freeze frame that and you can look at it, that's my signal chain. First, I just used the loud box so that I could sing away from the camera, but have a more concentrated sound. As soon as you get away from your source mic, you start to pick up all the room echo. You start to sound like you're in a box. So if you put your signal, whatever you're singing into, first of all, let's go back to the microphone of the iPhone. If you just get close to an iPhone and get up close, you're doing pretty good, and you can push live. That was the simple way of doing it. But I wanted to get a little bit better at it, so I stood about 8 feet away, sat down, had this microphone, and it going into that along with my guitar. It handles the guitar, so you could just get one amplifier like that, a little acoustic sonic Fender, whatever you can find. Put a microphone, a basic SM58 into it, and that's what I did for quite a few shows. But then a friend of mine, Scott, really recommended I get off because I was getting glitches from doing the phone feeds because I wasn't hardwired into the internet. So I got an AT&T line into this place, and then he sent me a Samson Go microphone. It's a little guy. This is it right here. I've got pictures, but I don't want to do the share thing. It'll scare me. So between the Samson that he sent me and the webcam, I'll just read it off to you. My gear, okay? It's quick. So, sorry about that. I've got a 2012 MacBook Pro. It has USB ports. It's an old computer. I added a terabyte solid state drive to it. Logitech HD Pro webcam C920. That's what's looking at me. I don't use the mic part of it. I use the Samson Go. And Fishman loud box, a Vox Pathfinder guitar amp, and an old PV head, PA head, so I can mic other things, gadgets like my sound effects. You know, this has got crickets on it when I tell a bad joke.
Yeah.
And this has got applause and boo. Here, let's do the boo. Oh, that's not it. Hold on.
Ooh, that boo is harsh.
So after songs, I do this, and the people that are watching my shows, I've done 50 shows. This is an integral part of it. At first, I was embarrassed and felt kind of stupid doing it, but I'm even talking to a mannequin during my shows. Her name's Helen. She's behind me. I go to the desk over there. I just pick up the phone and the camera. So just for lighting, I just use bug lights, clip lights. Are we talking about that yet? Doesn't
I think
matter.
we can jump into it.
Yeah, old PV head. It's a really old head, and it just allows me to put my Vox amp. Everything's to my right. If you can see my arm, I can reach everything. And the Samson Go mic is to my left, about 3 feet away from everything, and it picks up all of my normal cafe sound, and it's all around me. I started out too far away from everything, and I was reaching over like this, you know, to look at the computer, and it was distracting. So now I'm almost looking at the camera, but I'm actually seeing the computer too. Just surround yourself pretty close and let everybody get a look at your guitar and your face, and you're okay. And then if you want to have a cluttered background like I do, that's up to you. Okay, that's it. That's all I got.
Thanks, Michael. Okay, so set up do's and don'ts. We kind of touched on it a little bit, but why don't we get into a little deeper on the do's and don'ts for the equipment and even for the show itself. Take it, Megan.
Well, yeah, that is like a great question. I mean, to get started, like most importantly, just be yourself, sit in front of your camera, whatever you need to do to just get started is great. It doesn't actually even matter if you look left-handed, if you're not left-handed. None of that really matters. Your audience doesn't care. The I think the important thing is just if you want to do it, do it. And if that's as easy as going on a Facebook and clicking go live, do that. If you want to improve on that, there are some helpful tips, and we all have made mistakes and we've all learned things. Some of the things I've learned is make sure you have like a well lit area so people can see you. And make sure to do your sound check and make sure it works beforehand, and that way you don't get stressed out. And the important thing is, since it's different, since you're interacting with people who are electronically chatting at you and you can't see people's reactions or faces, and just sort of be yourself, engage with people. It's a little weird if you haven't done it before. You like sing to a picture of yourself singing to you. And the whole thing is, don't take it too seriously. Just have a good time. What I like to do is I like to have a little set list of songs that I know I'm comfortable with. I like to not, it's very important for me is not to read comments while I'm playing, because that can sometimes mess me up, because I get so like into what people are writing that I will read and get distracted and forget my songs. But be engaged with your audience and chat with people and be like, oh, look, where's everybody from? What is there any song that you want to hear? And don't be afraid to talk. There's like no wrong or right way to engage as long as you're being engaging, being yourself. Yeah. What about you, TK?
So I think what I'll do is some people have been asking about the video part of it. So I'll go over a do and don't for audio and a do and a don't for video. But in terms of video, I'd say definitely be aware of the room and the lighting, because photography is all about lighting. If you've got your subject there and there's no light, you're pretty much not doing anything. So what I use is actually just a cheap lamp right behind my laptop with a white bulb. That's what you want to use, because back then I was using those yellowish bulbs. That didn't make me look good at all. Don't use those. There's a reason why people use white light, which is what I learned. And just play with it. Put the lamp around the room, because wherever you put that light changes the way that you're lit up, and you can make it really dramatic. If I were to put that light bright like underneath me, it would look super creepy, which I've done before. And the don't, I think, is don't wear colors that blend in with your room, because my room here is kind of blue and gray. And before we got on this call, I was wearing a gray shirt, and I looked at my video, and it kind of looked like a face with some arms. It didn't. That's what it looked like, so I had to take it off. I had to wear something a little bit brighter, but try to have some contrast between the subject and the background. So that's for video, but in terms of audio, do always sound check. Some people actually sound check as they're speaking or playing, like Pete has headphones on right now. I'm not someone who likes to do that, so I have my headphones right here, and right before a performance, I'll put it on and test the balance between guitar and vocals. I'll test the reverb levels. Definitely don't use equipment you're not familiar with. Don't do that. Learn it before you use it somewhere live. Learn it before you actually use it for an application, because I've had times where I bought a new microphone and I wanted to use it that night. It didn't work because I didn't know it at all. So I was either too loud or too soft. Just
That
make
is
sure make sure you're comfortable with your equipment.
that is the best advice I've ever heard, TK.
Okay. Am I
Michael.
up?
Yep.
Okay, so somebody put a question in the chat. what this is a Zoom is a different camera. It focuses differently with this camera. I usually have a much wider shot sitting right where I am. I'm not sure why, but Facebook has a, I don't know. But I have this thing. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, and it's pretty obnoxious. It's got all my stuff right on it. Oh, it's backwards, isn't it?
It's not.
No,
it's
it's
right.
good.
It's not? Okay. Well, so that's something I drew up when I first started, and I just haven't gotten rid of it. But it works, and it's also important to put your PayPal and Venmo information into your title. But if you don't put it in the title, if you just say McNevin Live or McNevin in the Mud is what I usually do. A short title reminds your listeners that you're going up. But right underneath it in the comments, before you push go live on Facebook, you want to have that written. So I have a pre-written sentence, you know, for tip jars, and I change the show every time. I change it from 50 to 51 last time. And you go live, and then your PayPal info is in the feed where when people tune in, they see their chat box like we're doing now. They'll be able to see that you've got a PayPal. And your friends who watch you, it's okay to say, hey, would somebody type in my info into the chat box just to give everybody a hand in donating a little bit. And this really helps. And I'm not proud of how obnoxious this is right behind me, but it becomes white noise to your fans that are watching you a lot, and your friends who know you're just trying to survive, and it's becomes funny. Hey, this is my thing, you know, and you start, you know, rattling it off, but you don't spend too much time on it. I would also agree that you don't want to maybe read your comments while you're singing and while you're thinking about your show, but it's also great to acknowledge that people are writing in, and I ask for requests and I look at it. I'm not afraid to let people see me look into the feed. I warn them, I'm going to look in the feed for a second, see what's going on. Oh, that's funny, and somebody wrote something. You know, I'm trying not to limit myself too much. I don't want to be too constrictive, and I'm going to screw up. Allow yourself to screw up. That's a do, not a don't. Letting yourself mess up a song. I have messed up so many songs, but I just keep going usually. But I'll stop and retune if I have to. Don't treat it like you got to be perfect. This is a weird format for all of us, and make sure that you're giving yourself leeway to be like in a living room, even though you think you're kind of being professional. Treat it like you're in a living room with your friends, and chat, play, chat, whatever. Make it comfortable for yourself.
That's really well said. I wanted to add something to what you were saying about your sign, which I think is great and not obnoxious. I think it's wonderful. But if you guys are using your cell phones and you are using the selfie camera, like not this camera, but this camera, make sure if you are using that, your sign, you know, it doesn't matter if you're left-handed, but if you do have a sign, it will look backwards. So you want to make sure that if you're using your selfie camera, you either write your sign backwards in a mirror or you use the front camera, and just make sure that it's, you know, you do a little check, like maybe film yourself and make sure that that you're square, and you can read comments off your computer, you know, if you log into your computer and use this as your camera, that's fine. Just make sure people know. And I think you can pin, I don't know if somebody might be able to correct me, but I think you can pin your comments. So like Michael was saying, make sure you comment in your Facebook, like put your socials and your PayPal info and Venmo info. And
Yeah,
I think you can pin that to your post.
I put that in the show description.
Yeah, you could put it in the show
Yeah,
description.
and then you're not pinning it so that there's too much. You want as many people can see each other's comments. I thought about that once, and I thought, okay, maybe I should just put it in the show comments. But
Yeah, whatever works for you. I think there's so many great options.
yeah,
Yeah, just don't make sure it's not backwards.
Well, Facebook Live, you can flip that screen. There's a lot
Yes.
of tutorials on that, on how to flip it and make sure that you are presenting yourself in the right perspective.
That's great.
And Megan and GK, you both could probably speak to this. If you do have a cell phone and that's what you're going to use, there are extensions out there. I screwed up in my shows about show 10 or 11 or 12, I started getting a lot of glitches. If you have a bunch of friends pushing the love buttons and the like buttons during your song, it'll actually stop the feed and make it glitch because you're downloading and uploading at the same time. I had a hard time believing it, but then we tested it. And so if you get a hard line, I think you can go direct to Ethernet with your phone. Am I right?
There should be a way to do it. I haven't
Never
done
done
it. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure there's a way to do it. There should be a cable that goes out of your phone and into, those Ethernet ports.
Yeah, there you go. Something to think
But
about if you start to run into interference.
So what did you have
yeah,
to do? Did you tell your friends not to love your video while you're playing?
I actually, one of my friends who comes in quite a bit would actually tell them, please don't hit the hard buttons, just type clap. And that stopped it. That helped it for a while. But eventually you're going to get into an Ethernet cable directly over to your, if you're doing it on a computer, it's much easier. But I did 10 shows with the phone, so that's what we're here to say. Is you can get going with your phone, and you don't need all of this gear. You can just sing
and
right
that's
into your phone, no microphone, no nothing.
yeah, just get started and like
Yeah.
build up as you go. Like TK was saying, like make sure you learn the equipment before, otherwise you'll make the same mistakes we've made where we started and had to stop because I've started not knowing how to use my equipment, but that was like such great advice. And like Michael was saying, like just be yourself. Don't worry about mistakes. Just play, just perform. And like that last thing you were saying is if you end up doing it on your computer, if you can hardwire, if you can plug directly into your internet, that will save you some heartache for people being like, I can't, it's not working on my end.
Yeah.
So
Hey, another reason, and somebody put it in the chat, so I just read the chat. Another reason that your computer might be slow and you might get glitches, you've got too much stuff open on your computer and it's attached to your Wi-Fi signal. So, silence your phone, put it on airplane mode, and then shut down some of the extra things that are online in your computer, and you'll have less interference from, you want to be able to just pump your signal out and not have a lot of stuff taking up all that bandwidth.
Good info. If you are using Wi-Fi, get as close to your router as you possibly can to get the strongest signal if you're not
You have to
going
do
hardwired. Great. Okay. Next, how about if we say, okay, what are some of the next steps of going budget versus quality? I think we kind of addressed that, but maybe expound on that. Do we really need to go to like if you get advice from a retailer, they're going to pretty much sell you the room. But I think you've all stated that use what you have and then expound on it. But maybe you wanted to say a little more about that. Who wants to start off? Megan,
I'll start.
TK?
The do's and don'ts were I went out and bought yellow lights, so I actually do have a bunch of yellow lights all over me, as opposed to like the white ones. But and I've got hardwired, really cheap. You can get these things. They will control. This thing right here is it's a little handheld wire plug that your light has to go into it before it gets into your other plug, and you can drop it and raise it just like that. So now you're your own lighting technician, and everything's within arm's reach. So if you want to go, like that. So I've got that in a couple of different places. I've got switches around that I can boost lights and lower lights. That's all I want to say about lighting.
Else? TK, Megan?
Yeah, I'll jump in for a second. I'll touch on that point that you're saying if you go to the retailer, Pete. Don't go to the guy who's selling you stuff for advice about this,
Exactly.
because he's gonna tell you everything you don't need. If you had the money and the time and you wanted to waste it, yeah, go out and get that Shure SM7B that everyone uses for broadcasting and stuff like that. Get the most expensive mixer, and you'll sound great, but you'll still need to use it. To start off, I think what you have at home. Most musicians have something at home, whether it's one microphone and some type of mixer or something to get yourself into your computer. Start off with that and then just do your own research, because the best setup for you, this is what I tell everybody, the best setup for you is the one that works for you. It's not the same as my setup. It's not the same as Megan's setup or Michael's setup. It's the one you're used to using and the one that works best for you. So that's my advice.
Good.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think that and asking for help, like, because don't be afraid to ask for help. Like, I ask for help on everything because I don't know how to do anything. And so, we all know, all of us are musicians. We all know musicians who do these things, and we're all in this together. So don't be afraid to ask your friends or other people, like, hey, how do you get started? I'm having, like, I looked online, it was confusing to me. I couldn't figure this thing out. Don't be afraid to do research, because the more research you do online, the more you'll know and the more things will sound familiar. Because, like TK was saying, like, if I tell you my exact setup and you go and buy my exact setup, it might not work for you. You might be like, why? This doesn't sound good. This is not what I want. This just doesn't feel good to me. So the more research you do, the more you'll see, like, trends on what specific microphones people use, or what specific, you'll start being familiar with the speak, and then you get more comfortable. So then when someone explains something, your brain is picking up on the, oh yeah, okay, I understand what you say when you say broadcasting versus live stream or something like that. And I understand what you mean when somebody says "daw" to you. And so it is really great. I've done so much research. I want to learn how to do it, but if it feels overwhelming, don't be afraid to ask for help, because we're in this together.
Yeah.
Good. I think TK, I've asked you a lot, so I'm not shy about that.
That's fine. Well, the lucky thing is you're asking someone who likes to talk about it. That's the difference, If you ask someone who does not like talking about it, good luck.
Right, right. Well, okay, we're coming up to the top of the hour, but before we hit into the Q&A session or look at some questions, any last thoughts, parting thoughts that that you want to share with the audience here?
I did want to comment. Somebody had a comment about the Facebook shutting down the live stream option in October. I did see something about that. I haven't looked into it. I know that they've done some clarification since then. I tried to open up an article about it just now. It is a little confusing. I don't know that they are shutting down live stream for musicians specifically. I think it says here, a spokesperson for Facebook has now confirmed, although the new guidelines will come into effect across the site in October, the music guidelines have been in place for some time and will not affect artists using the site to live stream gigs or share their music. So I'm just looking at that one specific, it will not affect artists using the site to live stream gigs or share their music, but we're going to want to, we're all going to want to do our own research on that. I'm sure more will come out about that soon, but it is something to keep aware of, that things do change constantly. So just knowing about all the sites, there are a bazillion sites that you can live stream from, like Stage It and Instagram Live and YouTube and Discord and Twitch, and just there are so many. So I might have a list of them, and if I do, I'll throw that into the chat, just so
Yeah.
you are, can see what feels best for you.
Yeah, there's a program that I'm aware of, but I haven't used yet, because I've been really just married to the basics. Get a USB mic that doesn't require any knowledge, no interface. I have no interface. I just put the mic into my computer and then use my outboard 1970s gear to make a show. But we're all going to have to start maybe migrating into a more diversified ability, because Facebook is great, but I know that the audio visual is not that great, and other people use YouTube because you can broadcast to YouTube and then have that bounce over, and I think Restream helps you do that. So if I'm doing my homework right in the next 15 shows, I'll probably I'll probably be restreaming and using better applications that do involve some learning instead of just plugging stuff into my computer and singing. I probably will go a little bit more towards the trends that are happening, and not let Facebook take me out at the knees just in case it were to happen. I want to control my content. Megan does a really good job of that because she's also on Patreon. And I was wondering if we are going to ever get into that, but that's something that we all ought to look into as artists. If you're trying to make a living, if you're just trying to sing to your friends, get on your phone and do what we've been talking about. Just click go live and go for it and see what happens. But if there's a sort of an avenue to watch out for, it's Facebook right now at the moment saying that they're going to start limiting us somehow. And so there are applications out there. A friend of mine that helped me with my mic just sent me his own little tutorial of how to download all my videos from Facebook and store them so that I can upload them on YouTube later. There is a way to do that. Save your shows.
You should, if you have a link to that, you should share it with the, you might not have a link to it, but you can share it in the chat for everybody.
It was a Dropbox that I have to figure out how to get down from the Dropbox onto my computer, but it is, but there, I think, I don't think it's uncommon. I think that you can Google it and you'll see tutorials out there on how to take a video off of Facebook and claim it. And if it's us singing our own songs, which is quite a bit of what's going on, I think that Facebook might be going after people that are doing covers, but every once in a while, you know, I'll throw a Dylan or a Cat Stevens in there and I don't know. Okay.
I just threw something into the Dropbox, or excuse me, into the Zoom chat. It is a resource put together by Patreon. We did a live stream workshop a few months ago, and they put together this really great little thing that sort of has like, you know, this Zoom will be available to everybody later as well, I think, right, Pete?
Yes.
Yes, and then so this sort of has like lists of different live stream technologies, just platforms you can use and things like that. So you can use that in conjunction with rewatching the Zoom if that's helpful to you. So make sure you click on that and download that. It has some good tips on it as well.
Is there a way for us to, within this format, this is going to be recorded, but there's no way, is there a way to go in afterwards, after the fact, and add comments to give more information to people? Probably not, right?
I don't know.
I don't think it's the recording. I don't think you can add anything into that, but I'm sure depending on where you host it, we could probably send some stuff to Pete and just be like,
you know what, Pete also mentioned this is probably not the last. This was the beginning one, that we might do more that are, you know, ongoing. So maybe we'll have another one that's a little more wonky with, you know, tricks of the trade.
To the future. Anything you'd like to add, TK?
Yeah, I think one good benefit that came out of this whole pandemic thing, and this is a tip I'm giving all my music friends, is it's opened up a world for musicians that hasn't been around before in terms of being able to play at other places, because you know, everything's online now. So what I did right when everything started going online was I started looking up, you know, songwriter circles in Portland, Nashville, stuff like that, and most of them are open to people who aren't, you know, in the area to play at. So I've met other musicians whom I wouldn't have met before this because I would never be there, you know. So go look up those other online events and try to join them. Try to intrude, because that's what I did.
Good advice. And it's just the world is huge, but it is much smaller on the internet. You know, we can you know, gather people from across the country, across the world. And there's so many options of the software that we can use. And I'm going to say this tongue in cheek, but back in the early days of Zoom, which was about 90 days ago or 60 days ago, the sound was a lot different than it is now. They've improved it immensely in the past, just in the past week. So it is going to improve, and streaming and stay on top of that and stay current with the new updates for your software, for Zoom or Facebook Live or whatever you do use. because it is changing continually. Being in the Silicon Valley for 20 years in high tech, nobody sits on their hands. There's a lot of competition out there, and you know, they want to make sure that they're in the forefront of it and they get their market share. So there was a question in the Q&A regarding
It's
video.
funny. I just texted. I just wrote back to it, but
Oh, okay. Yeah, because there's a lot of different cameras out there. I'm using the camera that I'm using. It was $36. It's a Victor SC35 on Amazon for $35. But there's a lot out there, and what I'm hearing is, you know, if you have a choice between the quality of your video versus your audio should win, because, you know, we want to hear you, and people want to hear you more than, I hate to say it, want to see you, you know, and especially in a music medium. So hopefully you can parallel that to have both equitable and both great signals. But if there is one slight thing, make sure your audio is impeccable.
I think
because, yeah.
Somebody asked how to advertise shows in the feed, and it's sort of a quandary, because you got to go on. Once you push, at least on Facebook, go live, you are now live, and you don't have the link to your video until you go live. And
you
so
actually can do in the new Facebook live. You can
create.
set up a show, and then you get that live in advance, and then you can put that out.
That's a good thing to know. What I had done earlier was gone online, and I put a big sign. Show will start in a few minutes. You could hear me on the side feverishly typing, because I was posting to about 20 different groups that I thought might want to, you know, people that I'm involved with. I've gotten away from that, but that is one way to do it, is if you have somebody either helping you, or maybe if there's a better way with Megan saying that you can preordain your link, you know, that would be good. But if you just go live and that's what you're doing, and you're not tech savvy yet, you can grab your link, post it to a few places, maybe your band page, but also you can go nuts doing that. But I'm starting to find out that I want to do that less, and I post reruns on the other pages that I want to see it, instead of me doing all of that stuff and making people wait 3 minutes staring at a blank screen before I start singing. I actually just go ahead and go live, start playing, and I don't have to go through the rigmarole of trying to paste the link on different places on Facebook groups. And what I might do afterwards is the next day, hey, here's a rerun, and hit all those then, you know.
Another thing that I like to do is I'll create just like a little poster, like a show poster on my page, and you know, you can buy all those really great little, or download even lots of free ones, little applications on your phone, and you can design a little poster with a picture, and, you know, I'm going live, and, you know, on September 23rd, and then you put your time, you know, Pacific time, Eastern time, whatever, you put that on there, and you can post that around on your socials. You can paste it on Twitter or your Instagram stories. And that's another really great way to be like, hey, and then you send a reminder like, I'm going live tomorrow, you know, things like that. And then if you do just post the one link, then people can go on. Another thing I like to do is when I go live, spend the first 3 minutes or so just chatting with people, and don't get into your show right away, because the longer it's up, it does take people a little bit of time to log on to your feed a lot of the time. So unless you're doing a show that, like, stage it where people log in advance, it is nice to have just get a couple people in the feed before you start. Just another thought.
Yeah, I think promoting live streams is pretty much like how we promoted gigs back then. It just seems so different and weird, and that's the challenging part of it.
Yeah, I just message the crap out of people.
Yeah, that's pretty
When
much
I'm
what
in the
everyone
mood.
does.
When I'm in the mood, I'm not sure it always makes a big difference. I might go from 30 watchers to 40 watchers. You know, at least I think more than that. I end up with, you know, 600 or 700 views after most of the shows, but I don't know who actually watches the whole thing or clicks in for 3 seconds. I don't know how that works, but it's interesting that um, you can just go Facebook Live and that is so effective because people are all just jumping in all spontaneously. Then you wonder, why did I spend so much time worrying about it? But it is good to let people know you're going to play messages, personal messages to your friends and things.
And add to that, actually, there are groups online now that just focus purely on, musicians' live streams. And if you join those groups, you can actually broadcast on their page so that anyone who is a member will get a notification that says, hey, this guy's broadcasting.
Yeah. I wanted to get back to Gary. Gary wrote a comment in the question and answers about if I'm going through my live stream, how do you get the signal out to broadcast? I'm also unclear if there's a separate audio signal from the camera signal. How do you marry those up at the same time? So TK would be a great person to answer this question as well. But what I do is I go through a free open source platform called OBS. You don't need this at all. Today I'm not going through OBS, but when I'm doing my live streams, I go through OBS. There's great. It sort of marries everything together. It strips away processing and effects and things that that these platforms tend to, like even Zoom will put, it's mostly used for meetings, or it has been in the past mostly been used for meetings. So they put compression and things on. So if I'm playing my guitar and I get loud, it might block the sound out altogether. What OBS does is it takes all of that off. But you don't need that because a lot of people have made adjustments to things at this point. But when I plug my microphone and all my signal into my Apollo, and then I plug that into the computer. And then what I have at that point is I have a choice to select which audio source I want to use. So it's not going to use, it will use the microphone. It will not use the computer microphone and this at the same time, which is good. So there's no need to marry them together. I think that's what you're saying. But I can, if I feel like it, I can switch it back over to the computer audio in my audio settings in whatever platform I'm using, or in the audio settings in my computer. TK, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I just do want to stress the choosing the right input, because it pains me to see people have this setup and then not be able
Yeah.
to use the right input, because at any moment, there's 2, 3 inputs going into your laptop for audio and visual. So just make sure to pick the camera you want and the input that you want. It's pretty much the same on all platforms. Just click that little option wheel and it'll show up somehow. They make it really easy nowadays for us. So.
Yeah.
Yes. It can be really, really frustrating. Just remember, give yourself a little bit of time to play around with it. It can be super, super frustrating. If you're like, why is this not working? I don't understand. This worked yesterday. I'm not getting any noise out of this. Nobody can hear me. Just that's like some of the things, like the check those things first. Like make sure, like TK is saying, just click on your audio source. That Facebook will have it, Zoom will have it, everybody has it. Just click on whatever, it's a microphone or a wheel or 3 dots, and make sure it says, audio from computer, or audio from whatever your mine would say, like Apollo. So make sure like the correct one is selected, or else it can be so infuriating. You're like, I don't understand. I do that almost every time, by the way.
And one thing I want to add is make sure your microphone's plugged in. I've done that a few times.
Good. God, great info. There's a question here, and I'm not familiar with iRig Stream. Is anybody familiar with that?
I've heard of it.
I don't know enough about it to comment. Does any
I know people.
iRig is a way to play a guitar into your computer and then
into the iPhone interface to iPhone?
There's effects you can play with it. That's like an amplifier.
I don't have information on that.
I do know people who use it and they enjoy it. I have never used it personally, but I am, I know that it does work.
Yeah, sorry. Maybe that'll be we'll take that up on a future.
And there's a
future
question
workshop.
below, Anthony Arias, and he says, love iRig, so he could speak to it.
Yeah, Anthony, what's up?
Oh, and then underneath it, be like a pilot.
Be like a pilot. Have a pre-flight checklist. That is the best advice I've ever
Absolutely.
heard.
Yeah, that's a pretty good analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you add effects to your output sound? What if you want to add reverb to your voice and guitar? This is from Priscilla. So, you know, it's only going to take in what you send it. So I think it's mostly outboard gear, and then you process it outside the computer and then send it into the computer. I think that's what you're going to be doing. That's why I use the old Fishman with the reverb on it right here that I can do that with. And it's just an amp. So if you want to do that, you can go old school the way I do. But I don't recommend what I'm doing to anybody else. This is what I ended up doing with my crap that I have in my life, and I think that you're better off probably figuring out all those plugins and various different what do you call them? Interfaces. Interfaces. Yeah, I mean, I have pedals at my feet that also I can play my guitar and hit pedals, but it's just one microphone that requires no software going straight into the computer without even anything. It's the mic, USB, into the computer, and it's picking up all the crap that I'm doing in the room with my other stuff.
Yeah, I think like I can add effects through my Apollo Twin directly into my Apollo. You can add effects if you have like a little mixer that comes with effects. You can add effects via if you were going through an amp and you were actually miking the amp instead. You can do all of those things. I think that most important thing, like effects aren't, if it's a part of your sound, like you like sing really cool creepy songs with lots of like just drenched in reverb, then yeah, you might want to look into that. Otherwise, most people I know who do live streaming don't, they just do it simple. And if you're just getting started, my advice is just,
Go dry.
don't worry about that. Just get started. I mean, if it's again an important part of your sound, then you can look into, adding a mixer and things like that. But make sure if you have a drenched reverb, do make sure to turn off your reverb when you're talking, because can get pretty distracting when you're interacting with your audience. Turn it back on when you're going to play your songs.
Yeah, I don't actually use the reverb much. I tend to go dry, but I always have it here if I want to. I do this one song that requires it, so I turn it way up and I whistle, and I sound like Clint Eastwood's Spaghetti Western.
Anthony just answered our iRig question, which is great. It's nice. Wish you were here, Anthony. Right,
Well,
we'll put
it
a
looks
square in the
like
middle.
we have some topics for a future panel. So anyway, we're really overtime right now. So I want to thank the panelists, Megan, TK, Michael, and I want to thank the participants, all the attendees that came in for this. If you would like to get more information on future workshops, or think that this should be an ongoing series, send me an email, pete@westcoastsongwriters.org. And I thank you all for showing up, and I hope you have a great and wonderful rest of your day at conference.
I'm going to type Anthony's answer into the folder or into the chat just so everybody can see it, because I think some people can't see the comments. Hopefully that worked.
I'm gonna
About
go ahead.
iRig. But maybe we could all just quick put like our social media page or something into the chat. So if anybody has any additional questions they'd like to ask, they can feel free to reach out to me. I don't know everything, but I'm happy to share the knowledge that I do have. I'll put
I just put my information in the feed.
All right, mine's in there as well. Anybody can ping me. I'm always happy to talk about sound. So.
Me too. All right.
Okay.
Thanks,
well, thank
y'all.
you so much.
It's been a
Thank
pleasure,
you so much, everybody.
guys.
All right, thanks everybody.
Take care.
Learned a lot.
Bye-bye.